Well, we're waiting.
Welcome into the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400. I am Rob Sanders. Happy Election Day to you. We won't talk politics on this show because I get to come in here and talk about sports and the great game of football. I get to talk baseball when baseball is here. I am a truly blessed individual. I really, really am. I bring someone on with me now who likes to talk football as much as I do. Wes Bryant from the ACC Digital Network. Wes, what is going on, my friend?
What's going on? Big week in HD football, big games. Let's talk about it.
I tell you what, we have to talk a little bit about your alma mater. The Wake Forest Demon Deacons are a very quiet 4-2, sir, and they are a pretty decent football team heading into the last section of their schedule.
I know, that's what we do, man. You know, Wake Forest, they normally, when they play well, they get the pat in the head like a puppy. They're like, oh, yeah.
Isn't that so special? You won a game.
Right.
Bless your heart.
Everybody says that. Yeah. I tell them so they come in, so the teams come in and get punched in the mouth. And that's what the Demon Deacons are doing right now. And I think one thing I'm seeing with this football team, as I'm watching them this season, that lets me know that they are for real. Especially, you know, being a Wake alum and playing football there and watching every game that I could ever consume. The fact that they went down to Syracuse and took care of business the way that they did, they didn't play with Syracuse. They didn't let them hang around. They let them know that they were the superior team, and the final score reflected as much. And normally, you know, even when Wake's been good, sometimes when they play a lesser opponent, they play down to the opponent. Games are coming down to the wire. And so when they went in there and beat Syracuse the way that they did, albeit at Syracuse, but I'm just saying, just from my experience, we've struggled with teams like that, especially coming off of big wins. So I was certainly happy to see them come in and take care of business the way that they did.
Well, I tell you what, I like to look at ESPN's FPI, and it changes throughout the season. They give you percentages as to how big of a shot you have to win each game. With the last 5 games on the schedule here for Wake Forest, they're within the 60% area where I think it's a toss-up game in each one of them, with the exception of playing Notre Dame at the end of the season. So Wake Forest, I don't think gets the respect they deserve around the country, and this is a great time for Coach Clausen and his team to go out there and make some noise. And of course, Boogie Basham was named the ACC Defensive Lineman of the Week. I mean, they're doing some good stuff up there, up in Winston-Salem.
Oh, for sure. And I'll tell you now, depending on how this season finishes, I was just saying this morning, with Notre Dame, I want to continue to see just how much offense they can muster up down the stretch. And I know a lot of people may say, hey, this guy's out his gourd because it's Notre Dame. But with the way Wake Forest is playing defensively, if they can maintain this and keep playing the way they're playing offensively, 4th in the ACC in scoring, 37 points per game. If Notre Dame, if all they bring to the run table, all they bring to the table is a rushing offense, which, albeit it is great, but I think they could have a lot of trouble coming down to Winston-Salem, and that could be a potential game that could really throw a monkey wrench into things. You heard it here first. I'm just saying it right now.
Right.
But, you know, we got some more weeks to see what's going on. But with the way Wake Forest is playing, with that game being moved to the end of the season, that could be a game. Notre Dame could be in some trouble if they don't find some offense pretty soon.
I tell you what, it's going to be interesting to see how they finish out. And I'm not trying to put Wake Forest over like crazy, but they have an outside shot of getting to Charlotte, and it's not that far-fetched. That game coming down up in November, or at the end of the season on December the 12th, if they can take care of business from here until then, that's going to be for a spot in the championship game.
Yeah, we'll see how things play out. You know, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself there. That would be great, though. The Wake Forest are loving me, but we'll see how things go down the stretch.
Well, hopefully I'll see you at the ACC championship game in the press box, and we can have dinner and watch your alma mater play, whoever it is up there. So anyway, moving on from Wake Forest, as we look at, let's talk about the Clemson team for a minute. You know, they get down by 18 points, and I'm going to be honest, I was in line to vote on Saturday, and I'm watching the game on my phone, And I just never felt like Clemson was going to lose that game. I mean, there's just this aura of invincibility to them, sort of like how Florida State was when they came into the conference. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. I will say I was covering that game. I was doing the highlights for the ACC Digital Network. And as I was watching that game, when they got down 28-0, I did really think that Boston College was going to win that football game. I know it was early, but just sometimes I can be a little bit superstitious at times. I just feel like when teams make plays like what Boston College was making, and then the fact that when you had the ETN fumble at the goal line, then they do the offsides to get them drawn off. Then the guy catches the ball basically off his shoelaces for a touchdown. I was just like, man, Clemson's in trouble. Boston College is getting every break. Clemson is really struggling right now. But, then by late third quarter, I was like, well, who am I to say this? What do I know? I'm saying because Clemson just bounced right back. They start rolling that defense, locked Boston College up. They didn't score another point, and DJ Uiagalelei really showed that he is a five-star guy. He was big time, Travis Etienne, big time, and they just came through and they got the win.
Clemson there wins that game with their backup quarterback and missing 4 defensive starters. That says a lot about the Tigers' depth. Once they get everyone back and everyone's healthy, man, how scary is that team going to be?
Oh, for sure. I mean, you're talking about a school that's perennially getting top 5, top 6, 7 recruiting classes for the better part of the last 6, 7, 8 years now. The depth is certainly there. You talk about like the Florida State teams of old, and that's been the difference. When Florida State was dominating the ACC in the 90s, that was it. They could bring the second-string defensive line. They could start for your school. They could bring in, backup offensive linemen. They could start for your team. They had a backup quarterback that was better than anybody you had on the roster. So that's what you're talking about with the Clemson Tigers. I mean, DJ, how many schools can go to a backup quarterback that looks like a future number 1 overall pick? I mean, not many people have that luxury.
Yeah, you're right about that. And I think that's the big thing when I look at them. It's just the depth is just so outstanding on that front for Clemson. And, I want to talk a little bit about that Clemson Notre Dame game this weekend. It's kind of being put up as, the quote unquote game of the century. That's how it seems like every game is, but it's definitely, as of right now, the game of the year in the ACC because, Notre Dame has been consistent. I mean, they've looked kind of crummy in a couple of games, but generally they put out some pretty good football games. And of course, Clemson's been just a buzzsaw with the exception of the Boston College game, but should be a great matchup in South Bend. But for Clemson, I think the key is to try to slow down that Notre Dame running game with Kyron Williams.
Yeah, and let me clarify when I said that Notre Dame needs to find more offense. This is a team that's fifth in the ACC at 35 points per game, roughly.
Well, what else do you want from them, Wes, if you're trying to get more offense, man?
Well, the thing is, we see them in a game against Louisville put up 12 points,
yeah.
And we know the opponent that they're going to go up against, and we know the opponents that they will go up against if they were fortunate enough to make it to the college football playoff. And you're talking about a team that's passing the ball offensively that is felt in the ACC at around 206 yards per game. I can't name a wide receiver off of that roster that really scares me. Can you? I'll be waiting to see if you can.
No.
And that's the thing. When you play against these teams, the Alabamas and the Clemsons, who have those dogs up front, who's going to stuff the run, who's going to keep you behind the chains if they know that that's all you can do. You're gonna come into a football game against a coordinator like Brett Venables, and you're going to tell me you only have one trick up your sleeve, and that's to try to run the football down your throat with the guys that they have. I'm just not so sure that's going to work against this Clemson defense. And until Notre Dame gets out there with a quarterback like Ian Book, who's been for quite some time, and yes, he's had some great games, but we know in their bigger games he has not shown up. So you also put that into play, even when he had receivers like a Chase Claypool and some of those guys. So now you're talking about an offense that to me is very one-dimensional. And going up against the Clemson defense, I don't care if they played at Notre Dame. I don't care if they played at the Cathedral. I don't care where they play at. They're going to have trouble putting points on the board, I feel like, against this Clemson team. They're going to need to add in some wrinkles. some gadget plays to try to throw Clemson off, because right now, like I said, I just don't think Kyron Williams, albeit that offensive line is littered with guys who will play at the next level, but Clemson is just not a team you're going to come into the game and push them around and have your way at the line of scrimmage. If that happens, I will be surprised.
Did you hear what Brian Kelly said today about how they have to, quote, knock that quarterback down? Did you hear that comment?
Yeah, I heard what he said you need to do to against a youth quarterback. I did hear that. We put out a nice piece, again, a plug on the ACC Digital Network.
Absolutely.
DJ Uiagalelei that just dropped about 30 minutes ago. But I did hear what Brian Kelly had to say about that. Now, that is another thing that helps Notre Dame. This team is kind of a throwback team to like a 90s style football. They run the football down your throat and they play great defense. Now, we're going to see that defense also put to the test against a multifaceted attack like Clemson. And we know that defenses in college football in 2020, with the way that these teams spread the field, and when you have multiple weapons that stretch you from side to side, I don't care what defense you have. You could have a steel curtain. You could have any defense you want. It's going to be tough to stop. That's going to be the plan. They're going to try to get to DJ. The weather's going to be cold up there. He's a California kid. We'll see how he adapts to that. But I think he'll be ready to go. But, yeah, they're certainly going to try to get after him in that facet as well. And that's something else that could help them. If that defense comes to play up to their ranking as one of the nation's best, when you're talking about scoring defense, total defense, so that's also going to be very key for Notre Dame. That defense is going to need to keep them in the game, especially if you're getting out there and you're having some 3-and-outs against this Clemson defense and you're not able to throw the football like you want to. You're going to need that. And so that's also going to be it. So I don't know. Clemson's offensive line is very good, so I don't know how successful they're going to be doing that.
I like the math of the quarterback is 250 pounds. And I'm a physics guy. Knocking him down is going to be a process. Let's just be honest
you're
with
talking
that.
about the two best offensive lines in the ACC. When you're talking about sacks against these two teams, they're tied for they're 1 and 2.
Yeah, I just when I saw that, I honestly thought Coach Kelly had done lost his damn mind. I really did, because and I'm not saying you can't tackle him or whatever, but just the idea of, we're going to have to knock this guy down. You got to come up with something better than that, sir. Simply because the guy that lines up behind him, if you're going to focus on stopping and hitting Uiagalelei, the guy behind him is going to make you pay a lot. Yeah, for sure. And like I said, this Notre Dame defense, you're talking about the two best offensive lines, but Clemson number 2 in the league as far as sacks per game. And then you talk about Notre Dame sitting in the middle of the pack. So that's something else that's going to have to be above board that hasn't been this season. And that's the thing. When you come into a game against Clemson, you have to be a certain identity. You can't come in and just expect, okay, well, we haven't been sacking a quarterback much this season, but today we're going to do it. And we haven't been throwing the ball that well, but today we're going to do it. You need to be able to come into this football game knowing who you are as a team, having your identity down packed, so that when you step between those lines, you're ready to go and you have confidence in what you're doing. Exactly. That's like me saying I'm going to be skinny tomorrow, though I haven't been skinny since middle school. It's the same kind of theory, sir. All right, let's move along here. Friday night, a matchup that's interesting. Miami playing NC State. The 11th ranked Hurricanes have one loss on the season. That's to Clemson. And, of course, NC State comes in at 4-2 overall. That should be a great Friday night matchup for two teams that are jockeying for position there in the ACC standings. Yeah, it should be. But the thing with NC State, you just feel like you're really not getting the picture with them, but hopefully they can get that quarterback position coached up. They've had some time to do so. So hopefully they can muster an offensive attack and get back on track in that area. We know this defenses are going to help them too much. When you're talking about scoring defense, they're near the bottom of the ACC. So coming in against a Miami offense, and we know what they bring to the table. They don't blow the scoreboard up, but they're also pretty solid on offense as far as, having that threat at quarterback in De'Aaron King. But Miami's got to get that running game back going. And if there's anything that's
that NC State can try to hang their hat on is trying to get after the quarterback, putting them in obvious passing situations because Miami's having a tough time running the football. But it should be a good game. I think the Canes will come in there and handle business because I think the athletes on defense are going to be just a little bit too much for their quarterback.
Wes Bryant from the ACC Digital Network joins us here on the Rundown this afternoon as we look at the rest of the games on the ACC schedule this week. Virginia Tech playing Liberty. It's the first time in program history that the Flames are ranked. And I'm going to call it here. It's November the 3rd. Hugh Freeze is going to be coaching somewhere else next season. He will not be the Liberty coach anymore, regardless of what happens the rest of the way. Flames come in at 6-0. They play Virginia Tech at high noon in Blacksburg. Virginia Tech, a big favorite here, but this is also one of those games where if Justin Fuente really wants to stay at Virginia Tech, he needs to win this game over Liberty, regardless of what Liberty is ranked.
Oh, no question about it. I mean, they came in and beat a Syracuse team that is struggling and reeling this season. But you can't, if you're Virginia Tech, there's no way you let this team. And when you look at their schedule, yeah, they've had some decent wins, but, they're beating Florida International by 2 points, Western Kentucky by 6 for some of those programs. Yes, they came in to beat Syracuse, but let's not get that twisted. Syracuse is not Virginia Tech, and if you are the Hokies, you would be extremely embarrassed to lose that game. And, yes, Justin Fuente, that seat would then start to get a whole lot warmer if you are able to beat Liberty. It doesn't matter that they're ranked. It doesn't matter that their coach used to be in the SEC. When it all comes down to it, we're Virginia Tech and you're Liberty, and we're going to show you why we are who we are. So I expect Virginia Tech to do that. Khalil Hurd and the crew to handle business and take care of Liberty convincingly.
All right, up next, if this were a basketball game, you and I could talk hoops, but North Carolina comes in. They're kind of reeling a little bit. They go on the road to Duke. I say on the road. I mean, you could take a city bus, I guess, from one campus to the other. It's not that far, but still a big football matchup there. The Tar Heels are favored by 10.5, and they need this win if they want to stay in the mix. I mean, this weekend's almost like win or take your butt home, because that's kind of how it is with a lot of these games.
Well, for sure. And if you're a North Carolina fan right now, your confidence has to really be really low. Coming into that Virginia game, you're dumbfounded right now. You're the Carolina Tar Heels. Everybody you had coming back, you got Chaz Surratt on defense, and you thought the defense was going to be even more improved. You have not seen that. It's something that you cannot depend on. This is a football team that, the offense does have the propensity to come back, but that's the problem. They're always having to come back. It's like the offense cannot get a break. Now, they could do their defense a favor by starting fast as well, but this Carolina team, they just can't seem to get on one accord. It's the offense or the defense is one or the other, and it seems to be the defense kind of early on. If the offense can't come out on fire, they get behind, and then they try to rush and come back. And then your margin of error gets so small, like it was against Virginia, where it comes down to a fourth down and they get a fake punt on you. And then, things just are really magnified when you're talking about what happened to North Carolina. Duke right now, yes, they're coming off a huge win over Charlotte. And I say huge by margin of score and not in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly.
But, but they're rivals. And that's the thing. And they're going to be licking their chops and say, hey, if Virginia can do this, we can do this. If Florida State could do this, we could do this. And that's going to be a big thing about this game. I'm huge into intangibles and the psychology of the sport. And I think that when you do, you're looking at the teams that they've lost to, and you're saying, hey, these teams aren't that much better than us. We can beat these guys. We can get a nice win on our season. And there's nothing more satisfying than beating your rival. And so I think Duke will certainly be up for that. So Carolina better watch out for this game. And I said to myself after they lost to Virginia, I think Carolina, I don't think they're done losing. I'm not saying it's this weekend, but I'm certainly looking at this North Carolina team, just being really playing disappointing football right now and not being who we thought they were.
All right. Comments from Facebook Live. Jimmy says, Billy Goat football stinks. Thank you for joining the program, Jimmy. As we wrap up looking at the rest of the ACC with Wes Bryant today, Boston College, you mentioned the intangibles there. They have this whole thing of, man, We had the number 1 ranked team in the country on the ropes in their own house and come up short. Now they go and they play a Syracuse team that is basically playing out the string. I think this is going to be an interesting matchup as well. Boston College has the talent to go in there and roll, but psychologically, that could be something that could knock the Eagles down a little bit.
It could, but I think Syracuse this year has proven to be the remedy for a lot of problems for a lot of teams. So I don't think that's going to be a problem for Boston College this weekend. I think Boston College is starting to discover a little bit of balance, though they couldn't run the ball against Clemson. They did well running it the week before. Can they rediscover that running game against the Syracuse defense? I think they can. We know what Djokovic represents. I like him a lot. He looks like he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks that school has had. And so I think with everything they've been going on, Halfley and the crew, I think he probably told them not to categorize it as a moral victory, but I'm sure he was very proud of his football team, the way they came in and battled and got up on Clemson in a way that nobody thought they could. So he's going to tell these guys, hey, don't let up now. We lost the football game, but let's keep playing that style of ball. And I think they roll Syracuse this weekend.
All right, final 2 games, 2 disappointing teams. Pitt more than Florida State. That game's at 4 o'clock on Saturday. Florida State is a 2-point favorite in this matchup. It seems like Pitt, I thought they were going to be a really sneaky good team, but they've just kind of fallen into the wayside here.
Yeah, I mean, with Pitt, you talk about the injuries to Pickett. You don't know if he's going to play. But it's just the same problem that they had last year, just offensively. They can't find any type of explosion. They can't find any playmakers. They can't find anything to help this offense go to complement a defense that really started the season out on a tear. But I just don't know what it is about that Pitt program. They're sitting right at 12th again and scoring. New offensive coordinator, I believe Whipple. I believe it's his second season, if I'm not mistaken. But they just have been having trouble scoring the football, and that's been their biggest ailment. And until they solve that, they're going to continue to see these results. You just can't play college football in this day and age and not be able to score the football. It's just not going to happen. You're going to run into too many teams. Even bad teams are capable of scoring 30 to 35 on a given Saturday, and that's Pitt's issue. But like I said, they're playing against Florida State, and this is a team that's not tearing the world up either. So it should be an interesting game. And yes, I was right. I'm sorry, Mark Whipple. This is his second season there. But you're going up against a Florida State team as well, looking for answers, trying to figure out things. And I think this game is going to come down to who can get confidence early. If you come into the game, if you're either side, who can make a play early to get the team going, to make them feel like that they can win. And whichever team does that, I think will. I'm going to go with Pitt on this one. I think Pitt should be able to win this one. But if you can't win this one, then I think you really got to start looking around and just seeing what's going on.
I hear you on that. Final game, Louisville and Virginia. The world's going to be watching Clemson and Notre Dame. But at 8 o'clock, Louisville and Virginia will play. Virginia coming off that big win over North Carolina that really no one gave them a shot in. And Louisville, another disappointing team this season. But, it should be a decent matchup up there in Charlottesville, as the Hoos are a 2.5-point favorite.
Yeah, Virginia, like I said, last week they came out and put on a great performance. If you want to look at what team is trending up and who's trending down, well, you're certainly looking at the Virginia Cavaliers coming off beating North Carolina the way they did, starting to get healthy. Brennan Armstrong making plays out there. And their defense, they have some guys over there that can make plays too. So I like them in this game. It is amazing to me what's going on at Louisville right now, as far as just figuring out what ails them, why they can't seem to be the team offensively. Like defensively, it's not like I expected this team to be world beaters, but it's just offensively. I'm just, they may need a change at the quarterback or whatever it may be. But this is a game right now. Like I said, I'm going to go with Virginia. I'm going to ride the hot hand right now, come off that victory over North Carolina. I like what Broncos doing with the crew, so I'm going to go with them.
I kind of agree with you. And Bronco Mendenhall, the term that I can use on the radio is that he's got a set going for that fake punt there after going for it on fourth down 3 other times in that game. What a ballsy move for that coach. And, I can understand how young men can attract to that and be like, hey, I want to play there simply because of that. I mean, just those moves in that North Carolina game were just, I rewatched it after it had happened, and I was just like, wow, just across the board with that. So I really like Bronco Mendenhall and the stuff he does up there with Virginia. So, Wes, tell us where we can find some of your stuff and where folks can follow you on Instagram and Twitter.
Well, check us out, ACC Digital Network. We'll give y'all the best storylines. We keep you up to date with everything that's going on in the league. Like I said, we just put out a really great piece on DJ Uwe Ungalele today, so you guys can check that out. Check us out, ACC Digital Network on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all social platforms. And then also you can check me out, Bryant, on Twitter, West Got Range, or on Instagram, West Got Range 704.
All right, Wes. Hey, man, I appreciate you joining us here on the Rundown, breaking down the ACC for the upcoming week.
No problem, man. You know where to find me. I love it every time.
All right, man. Thanks so much. Wes Bryant joining us from the ACC Digital Network, a former offensive lineman for Wake Forest who knows his stuff. Generally, the offensive linemen are the smartest guys anyway. Now, of course, I've had last week, who was it? Levon Kirkland joins us. He'd probably tell us the linebackers are the smartest guys. Corey Jenkins would probably tell me the quarterbacks or the linebackers are the smartest guys. But in my opinion, you got to go with the offensive linemen, man. They just know their stuff. So as we look at those matchups for this coming weekend, the interesting games, in my opinion, other than Clemson and Notre Dame, Miami and NC State, Liberty and Virginia Tech, because if Liberty can roll through that game, look out. Virginia Tech may be looking for a new head coach. And finally, the game with Pitt and Florida State. I think they're going to give Mike Norvell another year, but Florida State's already shown if you're not getting the job done, they're going to get rid of you quick. So can they rally and pick up another win? We'll see how that rolls. But the Friday night matchup with Miami and NC State should be really, really good stuff. All right, so if you want to comment on what Wes Bryant said or what Brian Kelly said today about, we've got to knock down the quarterback. Really? I kind of laughed at that. But we'll take your calls on that this afternoon on the Rundown here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Of course, around the world on the iHeartRadio app. You're also welcome to watch us on Facebook Live. Just look for the Rundown with Rob Sanders. It will be right there for you. And you can interact with me through there. There's a chat feature there. And I'm on Twitter at Rob Sounds Good. I like the people who send me direct Twitter messages. You guys are awesome, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to the show, including one gentleman who said he's standing in line to vote and listening to the show. Well, thanks for doing your civic duty and for listening to the program. So if you've got something you'd like to add to the show, by the way, we will be happy to talk about that. Also, I'm going to go over the FPIs for South Carolina and Clemson because they change every week. And the computer models kind of favor South Carolina to pick up a couple of wins. We'll talk about that. And the win out for Clemson, the percentage to win out has changed a little bit for the Tigers. We'll tell you about that and a lot more this afternoon. Is that the FPI is just a very interesting computer thing to me because I'm such a computer geek anyway. I love checking that stuff out. Also, we've got some other stories we're looking at that we'll talk about here with you on the Rundown this afternoon. The NFL trade deadline, if any trades go through, we'll talk to you about that. And we'll look at some of the SEC matchups. This weekend in the SEC is pretty interesting in its own right, as there are, it seems like for the SEC, you've got 4 matchups. One of them is very, very interesting in Florida and Georgia. We'll talk about that game a little bit. And we'll look at some of the other SEC games. Only 4 games scheduled for the weekend. So we'll get into that and a lot more here on the rundown. Don't forget the podcast for the show will be up at about 5:00 today. If you'd like to get involved with that, some people like to listen at different times. You can do that. You can also check out the blog page. There's all kinds of good stuff up there at foxsportsradio1400.com. So with that, we're going to head into our break. We'll talk about the SEC and some of the great quotes that came out of some of the press conferences today. We'll get into that momentarily. You're listening to The Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400.
Darlene Graham Nordone talks about her brother, Lindsey Graham.
When people come up to me and they
Hey, thank you guys for listening over there. Appreciate y'all, man. You guys rock. You think LSU fans are still upset at Clemson fans? I think so. I think they are just big mad. They won the national title, but yeah, they're still acting silly in my opinion. Welcome back into the rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Around the world on the iHeartRadio app. You know, I wanted to bring something into the show today that has kind of been weighing on my head a little bit. And it's about LSU. You know, LSU had quite possibly one of the best college football seasons ever last year. And the more and more I look at what they did, it was outstanding. But you know what? There's a term that makes LSU fans upset. And that term is the one-hit wonder, which is what LSU has become. Now, I know that some folks will be like, but LSU was the national champion. Yes, they are. But my goodness, how far they have fallen. If you look at what LSU has done this season, their 2 wins are over Vanderbilt and South Carolina. Now, I know that folks are going to tell me, but Rob, they lost so many guys. And they did. I completely agree with you on that. But the attitude of the LSU fan base is outstanding. What I mean by that is that they think that the show goes on. The beat just keeps on rolling. That's what LSU fans think. And the reality is that right now they are not a very good football team. You can make the argument that they're going to go back to being Bama's stepsister. Yes, you can definitely make that argument. I look at LSU's FPI, which some people don't like the FPI. I understand. But it gives you kind of a computer-type model to look at as far as to what LSU is and where they're going for the rest of the season. And I wanted to bring up this because I came on this show and I said I thought that LSU was going to go 8-2. I didn't know how good Miles Brennan was going to be, but he ended up being outstanding before he got injured. But the rest of the team is literally hot garbage. And you can definitely make the argument that a lot of everything lined up correctly for them to win the national title last year. They have a senior quarterback in Joe Burrow who was 23, 24 years old, had plenty of time to be as great as he is, and not taking anything away from him because as of right now, he is outstanding in the NFL as well. But the attitude is that they've come back and they think, oh, well, we've still got these great guys that are playing for us, and they're not. But a lot of them, some of them opted out for COVID, and a lot of them left for the NFL. And with that, LSU, according to the FPI, right now they sit at 2-3. They play Alabama next weekend. 10% chance to win that game. 64% chance to win at Arkansas. That's going to be a tough game for them because Arkansas is nasty right now. Texas A&M on the road, they've got a 42% chance to win that game. The Ole Miss game is going to look like an Arena Football League game. 2 teams running up and down the field on each other like the Iowa Barnstormers back in the day when Kurt Warner was throwing passes around. That's what that game's going to look like, but LSU has a 72% chance to win that in their home finale before they go on the road to 8th-ranked Florida, the final game of the season, and they're at 24% chance to win that game. Why do I bring this up to you? Because there's a C word that a lot of teams need to have, and LSU doesn't have it. And that C word is consistency. Yes, you won the national title, but the reality is what did you do the next year? Did you keep your program consistently where they're thought of as one of the nation's best? And the answer is an emphatic no. People look at LSU now like, man, you remember when they had Joe Burrow and all those guys and Jamar Chase and they were running up and down the field? They couldn't keep that going, could they? That's why I use the term one-hit wonder with LSU, because that's what they are. Consistency is key, folks, and they don't have it. they'll be lucky to finish 4-6 this year. I don't know how they can beat Arkansas, in my opinion. They might finish 3-7. It's amazing how one season can completely throw your team into the toilet, which is right about where LSU is. You want to respond to that? 803-978-1832. 803-978-1832 is the number to call. If you'd like to join us here on the rundown this afternoon, consistency is key. You've got to be able to stay near the top. Certain programs do that. Alabama is one. Clemson is a team that does it. And I goof on the Big Ten, but Ohio State is right there as well. That's three teams that every season they're going to give you a top 10 matchup. Robbie online says, people like you make me wish we didn't kneel on y'all within the 5-yard line. That's a great point there, Robbie, but you don't have that team anymore. You're still stuck in that era over there. None of those guys are playing anymore. I know that hurts your feelings. You don't have that team. You're not consistent. So cue up the one-hit wonder thing there. They should play one-hit wonder music anytime LSU's on the road. If I was in charge of the stadium atmosphere, we'd have one-hit wonders from, Whip It from Devo and everything else down the line. Facts hurt, but that's just the way it is. More of the rundown in just a moment. You're listening to Fox Sports Radio 1400. Don't get upset over there, Robbie. Even if you did kneel, guess what? If you didn't kneel and you ran in, still doesn't matter. You're still 2-3 this year. Sorry. Under that logic, Yale has more national titles. Thanks for playing, though. Appreciate it. How about 2 titles in the past 4? Is that consistent? Just wondering.
SportsRadio1400.com, on your phone with the iHeartRadio app, and on hundreds of devices like Alexa, Google Home, Xbox, and Sonos, an iHeartRadio station.
Final segment of the rundown this afternoon here on Fox Sports Radio 1400, 803-978-1832. 803-978-1832 is the number to call. Jimmy says home team underdogs are the way to bet this year. Yeah, you're right about that. My picks last week were terrible. Absolutely terrible. Okay? I'm still going to pick again this week. I'm at 500 on the season. 52%, by the way. Someone who is a lot better than that is Tyler Crowder, host of Kicking It with Crowder. He will join us and give you actual picks that make sense. Yes, I would advise you to listen to my picks as like a goof thing, unless it's like UFC picks. I do really good with the UFC picks for some reason. Even though I just became like a fan of UFC pretty much when the pandemic started. I mean, I watched as a casual guy, but the reality is, as far as like actually paying attention and really grinding into the UFC stuff, my picks are really solid on that front. So Robbie said online, you said being consistent was the topic. I think 3 titles in 20 years is relevant. Yes. But do you really think that you're a national power? There's a difference between being relevant and being a national power. And right now, after the season they're having, that's not what LSU is. You have to be able to win and come back and don't have people thinking, man, they sure do miss that passing game coordinator that's now running the offense for the Carolina Panthers. They sure do miss that starting quarterback that won the Heisman. Yeah. Now it's at a point where, you know, LSU may go 3-7. Let's go with 4-6 because that's what the FPI says. That is a heck of a drop off. And then you have the whole thing of self-imposed violations. Lots of guys that just left the team. People are starting to question a little bit about what's going on down in Baton Rouge. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832 is the number to call if you'd like to join us here on The Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Of course, around the world on the iHeart Radio app. You know, I mentioned this yesterday with Florida and Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen got fined $25,000 by the SEC. He basically went out there and was almost like an old school wrestling manager. He thought he was Jim Cornette. You know, the old guy, Jim Cornette, that ran around with a tennis racket. That's who he thought he was, running out onto the field trying to defend his quarterback. So he goes out and acts like a complete idiot and gets basically fined. Wouldn't it have been more interesting if what happened to Jim Cornette when he used to do that actually happened to Mullen? What happens if some big, huge offensive lineman from Missouri draws back with his elbow and catches Mullen right in his teeth? I'm not saying doing like, crazy damage to him, but knocking him down and letting him understand, you're a coach. Stop going out there trying to incite players. You're supposed to be the grown man of the conversation here, sir. And what are you doing? You're out there basically trying to get the crowd into it and making it like it's a WWE event. Dan Mullen has had a horrible year as far as the public relations type stuff. I mean, he really has. The whole stuff with, I hope we pack the swamp, not really caring about the COVID-19 pandemic, which I'm not, please don't call me at 803-978-1832 and tell me people shouldn't take the coronavirus seriously. I'm not having those conversations today. If you want that kind of stuff, go to your Twitter feed and just type A, either I agree with the coronavirus being serious, or B, I don't agree with the coronavirus being serious, and watch your feed just fill up with everyone thinking that they're a doctor. Don't bring that here. I'm talking about the fact that he can't keep his mouth shut when he's supposed to, and he wants to be Jim Cornette out there getting the fans crazy. If Florida had more than one loss on the season, let's say that they were in where they're 2-3, and they've been a disaster. You think the fan base wouldn't be more upset with him down there? Winning is the best deodorant ever. Jimmy says Bobby the Brain Heenan. Yeah, Bobby the Brain Heenan had neck issues because of what he did in the ring. If you run into one of those offensive linemen in full pad, crazy. Some comments about what I said about LSU. Robbie says that we missed them all. A bunch of freshmen, a bunch of transfers, bunch of new coaches. The connections aren't there. He's right about that. It's a circle. Sure. Yeah. And Coach Orgeron came out and said that his defense this year was better than the defense last year. When you tell people that, you just look silly. You look like you are the last clown coming out of the clown car. He also says the best season ever had the biggest drop-off ever. That's really a lot of fans don't understand. If you can't beat State or Mizzou, then there won't be many that we win. And Dan Mullen is an OG for that one. Goes with the Florida like peanut butter goes with jelly. Some people like that kind of thing. I'm just saying you're supposed to be the leader of young men. And to be honest with you, that's why I don't coach. Because I would be out there losing my mind. But you got to be the most mature guy in the room. I don't have to be mature here. I can be a goofball here. Okay? But if you're Dan Mullen, you're supposed to be leading 110, whatever the number is, players, and they see you go out there and act like you're Bobby the Brain Heenan or Jim Cornette, they're not going to act right at all. And I'm calling it right now. The rivalry between Georgia and Florida this weekend at the world's largest cocktail party, which I'm not supposed to call it that, sorry, but that's what it's always been since I was, when I first heard about this game. Okay? But this weekend, I guarantee you there'll be personal fouls called against Georgia and Florida. And if the game does get out of hand, Dan Mullen doesn't need to come into his press conference and think, I'm trying to set the example for these young men and we want them to be this and that and everything else. When the reality is you acted like a complete idiot last week. Just saying. He has no leg to stand on with me. And you know what? That may affect Florida recruiting down the road because the parents that are very strict on their kids and that they want their kids to go somewhere where that kind of discipline matters. You don't want to go to Florida because look who's leading the clown show down there. Just saying. That game is going to be interesting to see how many personal foul flags get thrown for people acting stupid. Over and under in my book is 2. I'm taking the over. I think they'll have 2 in the first half. Just saying, guys are going to lose their minds in this game. And this is the big, huge build-up game here. Because I believe that whoever loses this game is out. Robbie wants to know who have I got, Florida or Georgia? Look, the Florida defense is not very good. The Georgia offense is not very good. I'm still somewhat confident in that Georgia defense, though. But that Florida offense, the Kyle-to-Kyle connection, Trask to Pitts, is pretty outstanding. Pitts is going to make a lot of money in the NFL. I think he's the best tight end in college football. And he's got chemistry with Trask. So that's going to be an interesting matchup in its own right. You've also got the setup here where the line has Georgia favored by 3.5. So it's basically a pick 'em in my mind. If I were going to bet, I wouldn't bet on that game, period. But if you're telling me, Rob, give me your pick on who's going to win, I'm going to go with Florida. Because I don't have any trust in Kirby Smart. And I think that wacko Dan Mullen, this will be his year to get over the hump and finally beat Georgia. It's going to be an interesting game on Saturday. Folks watching on Facebook Live, please subscribe over there. Folks listening on the air here, you can catch the podcast. It'll be up about 5 o'clock today. Lawton Swan from Clemson Sports Talk is next. He's the czar of Clemson Sports. I'm on Twitter at Rob Sounds Good. Happy Election Day. We will see you tomorrow. Thank you guys for checking in, man. We appreciate it. Yeah, I think Daniels is going to transfer, Robbie. I really do. DeJuan Harris should get another shot too, but Kirby Smart's just not very bright. I don't think Kirby Smart is very bright at all. If he was bright, he wouldn't have put Bennett out there. Because of what we know, Bennett is just not very good. But hey, man, subscribe to the page here, man. I'd love to have your thoughts throughout the week, man. We do all SEC, ACC stuff, man. Appreciate you guys. Mm-hmm.